alayhimus salam, and of the Ma'sumin alayhimus salam, that are the beacon of knowledge. And the knowledge comes from them. They are the light of knowledge. And whenever you go, you would see Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salatu wasalam saying, Saluni, Saluni, that ask me before you would leave me. And I know more about the skies than about the ways on the earth. So you see, like you have people like Amir al-Mu'minin that Prophet said, Ana Madinatul Ilm wa Aliyun Babuha, that I am the city of knowledge. Prophet referring himself as city of knowledge, and referring Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salatu wassalam as the gate of knowledge. You have people like Imam Hassan alayhi salatu wassalam, that Khidr would come in, and if he would have question, he would question Imam Hassan alayhi salatu wassalam. The most difficult of the questions that would be put forward, and without researching, he would give the answers there and then. Likewise, Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wassalam, his sermons are really famous on the day of Ashura, the way he wanted to communicate the message, the way he even gave the sermons and the knowledge to the people, even before coming to the Karbala, and on all his way from Mecca to Karbala. Then you have Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salatu wassalam, and all these Imams that you see, that they have imparted the knowledge in such a beautiful way that it is really difficult for us to understand, like who was most of the knowledge, as they were from the same light. And it is impossible for us to discern, to understand their fadila in a way that we can know exactly whatever fadila they have. Our limited knowledge, our limited understanding cannot comprehend whatever blessings or whatever merits Allah has given to them. In spite of that, in spite of the knowledge, remember this terminology that I'm always repeating, is the knowledge, right? In spite of all the Imams that have so much knowledge with them, right? There is one Imam that stands out, and is called what? Alimu Ali Muhammad. And it's not something that we Shia says it just because of our love for him. It is something Imam Kazim alayhi salatu wassalam, who was referring to the Imam after him, he referred to Imam Rada alayhi salatu wassalam as alim, someone who is the most knowledgeable from the progeny of Muhammad wa ali Muhammad alayhi wassalam. So you can see that, out of all Imams, he is being called as what? Alim, a scholar of Ali Muhammad alayhi salam. And definitely, if you see the way he has debated with the people, the way he has defended the true message of Islam, the way he has defended the wilayat of Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salatu wassalam, and the way he has exposed the enemies of Islam and the enemies of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, there is no doubt that he was the scholar of Al Muhammad alayhi salam. So with this, whenever we have the wiladat or shahada, just have a basic understanding of who the Imam was. Imam Ali bin Musa al-Rada alayhi salatu wassalam. If you go to his shrine, right, you have different vibes when you go to different shrines of Ali Muhammad alayhi salam. You go to the shrine of Imam Hussein Abu Abdullah alayhi salatu wassalam, you would have this vibe and you have this feeling of grief within you. You go to the shrine of Imam Qadim and Imam Jawad, you would have a sense of tranquility, you would have sense of peace within you. You would go to the shrine of Hazrat Abbas, you would have another sense within you. But when you go to the shrine of Imam Rada alayhi salatu wassalam, and I want all of you to understand and reflect upon it, if you have been there, and if you have not been there, I pray Allah Almighty to inshallah give you the tawfiq to visit there. You would actually feel as if you are in a courtyard of a huge Malik, right? Someone who is ruling all over the earth, and you are in the courtyard of that huge person. And you would feel as if like there are so many people, all of them visiting Imam Rada alayhi salatu wassalam. And you would just have that feeling that, Mawla, I have come with so many hajat. When I say you're going into a courtyard of someone who rules the whole world, then I literally means this, that you're going to his courtyard and you are giving your salams to him, you're giving your salutations to him, you're giving your salawat to him, and you're wishing in return that Mawla, please accept me among your closest one. Mawla, I have so many hajats. I have so many spiritual deficiencies, right? I have so many things that I need within my life, be it regarding the career that I want to go through, be it regarding my spiritual health, be it regarding the closeness that I need from Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. But Mawla, I need know one thing, that you are Anis al-Nafus. You are Shams al-Shumus. Anis al-Nafus is someone, who would attract the people most forcefully. So you would go and you are under the companionship of whom? Who is Anis al-Nafus, who is among those personalities that would attract you, to the pinnacle and in the most forceful way. And you would be attracted towards him no matter whatever belief you have. That's why you see for Imam Rada alayhi salatu wassalam, one thing I would like to mention more, inshallah we'll come to the main class. There was a scholar, his name was Ibn Hibban. Ibn Hibban is not a Shia scholar. He is one of the Sunni scholars. And he has written a lot about different topics. He has written about the topic of hadith. He has written topic of history. He has written on the topic of Rijal. And when he's mentioning the topic of Rijal, under his book, the name of the book are Trustworthy Narrators, right? That I translated into English. But the literal name of the book is called Al-Thiqat, someone who can be trusted upon when it comes to the reports of the Prophet. He quoted that Ali bin Musa Rada, alayhi salatu wassalam, he gives a brief introduction who Imam was, and then he says, whenever I would have a difficulty in my life, I would always visit the grave of Imam Ali ibn Musa alayhi salatu wassalam, and my problem or whatever the hajat that I would have within me, that would get fulfilled by Allah Almighty by the blessing of the grave of Imam Rada alayhi salatu wassalam. That's a huge claim to make by a scholar like Ibn Hibban. And this is one of the reply that you can give to the Wahhabis or the Salafis when you're talking to them. And if they would question you and they would ask you, why would you visit the graves of Ali Muhammad alayhi salam? One of the reply that you can give is that, see, I have a lot of proof, but one of the proof is that one of your own trustworthy scholar, Ibn Hibban, Ibn Hibban is not a normal figure. You go and talk to any Sunni scholar, he would attest to what I'm saying, right? He would say that I have visited, I have seen in his book, I have heard the story of him going to the courtyard of the grave of Imam Rada alayhi salatu wassalam and asking his hajat from Allah Almighty, and Allah Almighty fulfilling that hajat. And that's not only exclusive to Imam Rada alayhi salatu wassalam. Even the Sunni scholars like Abu Ali al-Khallal, you go and read Tarikh Baghdad by Khatib al-Baghdadi, he would mention that there was a Hanbali scholar, Abu Ali al-Khallal, he would visit the grave of Imam Musa bin Ja'far, Imam Qadim alayhi salatu wassalam, whenever he would have difficulty within his life, and he would ask Allah Almighty by giving the wasila of Imam Qadim alayhi salatu wassalam, and all of his hajats would get fulfilled by the blessing of the grave of Imam Qadim. So likewise, we do have these personalities, and if we cannot visit the graves for whatever reason, right, we can still give our salams to Imam Rada, right? Assalamu alayka ya Abul Hasan. Assalamu alayka ya Ali ibn Musa Rada. Assalamu alayka ya Anis al-Nafus. Assalamu alayka ya Shams al-Shamus. Assalamu alayka ya Mawlai wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So we send our salams, we send our salutations, we send our salawat to our eighth Imam, Imam Rada alayhi salatu wassalam, with this umeed and with this intention that inshallah may Allah fulfill all the hajats of all the people that are listening to this lecture, and not only the people that are listening to the lecture, but all the mu'mineen and all the people that they have asked us to pray for them, and everyone that we don't know, everyone, every believer on the earth, may Allah fulfill their hajat by the kindest wasila of Imam Rada alayhi salatu wassalam. So we come back to the topic that we are supposed to discuss today, and the topic is of mutaharat, right? Mutahirat, should I say it like this? Mutahirat and taharat. So we have already discussed the things that are najas. We discussed the blood is najas. We discussed urine, feces, dog, pigs, and all those things that we have already discussed are najas, right? Then we discussed that how a thing becomes najas too. Remember the first session that we had of the last month, that we also discussed about Jannatul Baqi, and then we discussed about the things, the way it gets najas, right? We said that you need to have surety within your mind, and then we had some follow-up questions too that were pretty much on the same lines. And now, once we have ascertained that the certain thing is najas, let's suppose the ring that I'm wearing gets najas, right? My hands, they get najas, right? Or any other thing that I am wearing or I'm using, it gets najas. What are the ways that those things can become pak, right? What are some of the ways, right? So Sharia or the fiqh has described several ways that once the thing gets najas, it can get pak, right? Now, because there's hardly anyone that doesn't know Urdu here, so I'm using the word pak, but you can just use the ritual purity if you want to explain it to anyone that doesn't understand Urdu, right? So pak is something really easy to use. Kaise pak karenge? Otherwise, if you're talking to someone who doesn't understand Urdu, you can just say, how would I ritually purify something if it gets najas, if it gets contaminated, right? But just for our understanding, just to make it easy, just for other listeners that pretty much know Urdu more than the English, we'll use the word pak for something to make it pure, and najas for something that's already been najas, right? So najas is used in two ways, right? The word najas sometimes refer to the ayn al-najasa, something which is najas by itself. Let's suppose blood and all those names that I have mentioned, they're ayn najasa. Ayn najasa, you cannot purify them even if you clean them with whatever water you want. A blood will always be najas, right? A feces will always be najas, right? A dog will always be najas. You can use 1,000 liters of water and you would give a bath to a dog, trying to make it tahir, trying to make it pak, but it would never get pak, right? So the word najas sometimes is used for ainun najasa, right? Sometimes the word najas is used for the mutanajjis, right? Or mutanajjas. Mutanajjas is what? Mutanajjas is something that gets najas because it gets into a contact with the najas thing, or it gets impure. Let's suppose this book that I have, God forbid, right? If a drop of blood falls onto this book, then this book, ritually, this book is tahir, right? But when a drop of blood goes onto this book, then this book gets mutanajjas, right? It gets najis, it gets impure. Now, these mutanajjas thing, or these najis thing, as we say, they can be purified by the things that I'm going to mention now, inshallah, right? So, you know the difference between the ainul najasa and the mutanajjasat, right? But when we are using the word, I would use najas for both of them, just to make it a little bit easy, right? So if this thing gets najas, I would say, right? The right word to say is if this book gets mutanajjas, but just to make it a little bit simple. So we discussed a little bit of terminologies that we have to use during this lecture. What do we mean by pak? What do we mean by najas? And what are the meanings that we would be using the word najas? So in case this topic is really, really important and is of prime importance, you have to use the washroom, you have to use the restrooms every time. The najasa plays an important role, the tahara plays an important role. You would have to use so many times, you would have to go to, let's suppose, to workplace, and probably you might get in contact with someone who is impure, najasul ayn, someone who is, let's suppose, a Hindu or Sikh, right? In that way, you would have to purify yourself, right? So knowing this topic is of utmost importance, right? Yes, I understand the importance of namaz, but you're doing it 5 times a day. I understand the importance of the fasting, but you do it, once in a month. 1 month in a whole year. And I understand the importance of the other ibadat too, khums, right? Hummus, you do it once in a year. Zakat, probably you would not even have to take it out. Fitrana, you take it once in a year. But this tahara and nijasa, my brothers and sisters, you have to do it every day. So there is no if and buts of not knowing the rulings regarding the taharat and nijasa. And I'm really regretful that the people that are not attending this lecture, and I would really request the management of Baqar Uloom, if they could convey this message, if they could convey the lecture to the people that have not attended the lecture today, and let them know this topic is really important. Not for the sake of the getting good marks, or not for the sake of like any other thing, but just for their own sake. If they would know this topic really well, it would really help them a lot in their daily life, honestly, right? So coming to the topic of mutahirat, something that will make a thing that have got najis pure. These are called mutahirat. Something is tahir. Tahir is something which is packed by itself. Then there are some of the catalysts, some of the things that you can use, some of the things Allah has made that you would use in your daily life that would make the things that have become impure pure, right? Najis चीजों को जो पाक बनाती हैं, those things are called what? Mutahirat, right? So tahir are things that are pure by itself. Let's suppose my the jubba that I'm wearing, the kurta that I'm wearing, it's pure, right? It's tahir, but it's not mutahir. Mutahirs are only few things that can make the najis thing pak, right? And when I say najis thing pak, it all obviously means mutanajjasat, not ainu nijasa, as we have already discussed. So I won't be going back again and telling you the difference again and again. So just remember, if I'm saying the najis thing will get pak, automatically it means the mutanajjasat that will get pak, that will get tahir once you're using those things that I'm going to mention. Mutahirat. The first of the mutahirat and the topic that we will be discussing in detail would be water, right? The other mutahirat, I'm just going to brush through those, but obviously we won't have a lot of time to go through all of it because of the lack of time, and because probably it's not really something that is concerning to you in your daily life. So we would be discussing something that you're pretty much using in your daily activities, in your daily life, so that it's a little bit easier for you to connect yourself with that. So water is the first thing. Inshallah, we will be going to discuss that in a little bit detail. Earth, zameen jise kehte hain. So earth is another source that you can use to purify certain things. What do we mean by earth? How it gets tahir, how it gets pak. This is a discussion that, inshallah, if we would have it in future classes, we can discuss that in a little bit of more detail. But for now, I won't be discussing that. I'm just going to go through with you all some of the headlines right now, right? So earth is another way that you can get some of the, like, imagine your slippers getting najis. You can clean your slippers can get pak if you walk onto the earth, certain type of earth, not some of the roads that we see. It's there are like a little bit of details, inshallah. We will be going and we'll be discussing that, inshallah, later. Then you have another source that can make the things tahir. It's called sun, obviously, sun. And then again, it can only do the immovable properties, not the movable ones. And then there's some other sharait too, inshallah, if we can go through it in some later classes. Transformation is called what? Istihala. Istihala is another ingredient that can purify the najis thing. Istihala means that chemically the form of the nijasa or the form of the mutanajjis gets changed completely. Let's suppose if a dog, if it falls into a mine, a salt mine, right? And that dog, because of so much time, the dog transforms into the salt itself. When a dog, it goes into a salt mine, right? And when there's so much salt there, right, the dog would change its form. Obviously, the dead body of the dog would not only be dog anymore, it would become something completely different. Or likewise, you have a paper that got najis, right? And you put it into the fire. Now, it has become something completely different after you have put into the fire. This whole process is called what? Istihala. Now, the new form of it would not be najis, even though the original form of it was najis. Why? Because chemically it has been transformed into a thing which is completely different, right? So chemically, I mean, like people that are studying chemistry and physics, they would know a little bit of difference between what do I mean by the chemical reaction and what do I mean by the physical reaction. The physical reaction would not change the reality of the thing. It would still be najis, right? But chemically, if a thing has changed, then this process is called what? Istihala. Change, inqalab. This is another way that you can get the things tahir. What do I mean? Let me just give you an example. The reason I'm giving you one of the shortest example in each of it is so that you know, and when you're talking to the people or when you're going through the book, like Tawzihul Masal, so you would know a little bit about what exactly it means, right? So inqalab or change means, let's suppose, when, let me just give you an example, will make it a little bit easier, right? Your blood is najis, right? The blood of mosquito is not najis, right? So we have already established the blood of mosquito is not najis. Why? Because when a mosquito dies, or when you know, kind of like beat the mosquito, right? The blood that comes out of it, it's not the gushing blood that comes out of it, right? It's the normal blood that would just flow around. But if you would kill like someone, like an animal or a human being, or if you cut the part of the body, the blood gushes out, right? This gushingness would determine if the blood inside a body is najis or not, right? So the blood of a human being is najis, the blood of a mosquito is not najis. Let's suppose a mosquito bites you. So when mosquito bites you, it's basically taking the blood of your body, right? So the blood has transformed from the body of a human being to a mosquito now. Now imagine 5 minutes later or 10 minutes later, you killed that mosquito. When you kill that mosquito and the blood comes out of it, now that blood would not be najis, even though you know the source of that blood was a najis blood, was the human body, right? But since it has changed the form from the human blood to a mosquito blood, now that thing would not be called as najis, right? And we call this in fiqh as inqalab. Inqalab means inqalab, not a revolution. Inqalab means qalb, which means to change from one form to another one. Another way that things would get from najis to pure is Islam. Let's suppose a kafir, a Sikh, or Hindu, if he converts from if he converts from Hinduism to Islam, or if he converts from Sikhism to Islam, now the body that was najis initially, the whole body will become pak as soon as he would recite a kalima. As soon as he would say La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, believing in it, what automatically means the body that you were seeing 5 seconds before najis, 5 seconds later, the whole body is pak. So this is called Islam. And then you have tabi'at, and then you have the removal of original najasa. The removal of original najasa is important, and I think the pets that we have, sometimes this masla comes a lot, and I think it's really relevant to explain it here too. Imagine if you have a pet. Imagine if you have an animal that you want to keep with you. Now, the part of the body of that animal gets najis. As soon as that thing gets najis, as soon as the najasa from the body of that animal gets removed, either way, whatever way it's done, the body part of that animal would become pak again. Now, how is that relevant? The body part of a human being, when it gets najis, imagine my hands, if a drop of blood falls onto it, even if I take the drop of blood out, and if there's no ainun najasa left, if still my body part is not pak yet, I have to take it under the water, and then only my body part will become pak once I have purified it with the water agent. But with the animals, only with the animals, like imagine like if you have a cow, if you have a cat, or if you have something like that, a rabbit or something, only with them, if their body parts get najis, right, you don't have to purify it with the water. As soon as the ainun najasa goes away from their body part, it gets pak completely, right? So this is called what? Removal of ainun najasa. And then you have another ruling regarding the disappearance of a Muslim. um, this is when what happens is, like, let's suppose if I am using something, if a Muslim is using something which is important to him, and if it gets najis, and if you know that the Muslim would not keep it najis and will ultimately make it pak, so the next time you see the thing, the same thing with the Muslim, you would assume it pak, right? You would assume it's tahir. Again, there are so many details within each of the heading that I'm going through. It's literally really, really impossible for me to explain you everything and completely within few minutes, right? But I'm just giving you a little bit of headlines so you know that. And likewise, if the blood within when you ritually slaughter an animal, a part of the blood comes out when you slaughter an animal Islamically. Obviously, when you cut the jugular vein, a lot of blood comes out, right? Be it a chicken, be it doing with a cow or whatever, right? But there are still some body parts in which the blood remains, right? I'm not sure if a lot of you have actually celebrated Eid al-Adha in Pakistan, but you would see this, when you would slaughter an animal, after the animal is being slaughtered, still within the animal body, there will be certain body parts that will still contain the blood. Now, the blood that's retained within the body part, once a normal amount of blood have already came out of the body, that blood would be considered as ritually pure. It would not be considered as najis, right? So imagine sometimes you were buying a chicken, and within chicken you would see there's within the leg piece, sometimes you see that, right? Within the leg piece you see there is a blood clot there, right? Or imagine if you are boiling chicken, you would see some blood coming out sometimes, right? That blood is not najis. It's really, really relevant, and it's really, really connected to us. Why? Because sometimes when while we are cooking, right? People that cook would know this, right? While you're cooking chicken, right? It happens a lot, right? The blood starts coming out a little bit from the chicken pieces that you're using, right? Or sometimes you're doing barbecue, right? The blood starts coming out a little bit from the backside, right? The blood that comes out is not najis. It's pak, right? Does it mean you can consume that blood? No, of course not. You can never drink or you can never have the blood. You can never have it, right? But that doesn't make it najis. What is the faida and what is the benefit that you have? It means even if you're cooking and even if you have put it into the pot, right? Even if a blood comes out and if it mixes with the soup that you're cooking, right? With the salan that you're making, right? The salan will not get najis. It's a ruling that's more for our mothers than for the children, right? So these are some of the mutahirat that we have went through, and inshallah now we will be discussing a little bit about the kinds of water, right? So now, obviously, I won't be discussing every mutahir. I would be only discussing one purifying agent, which is water, and the other agents are important to all of us, but not really relevant again. Because once one of your body part or any of your thing that you're using would get najis, you would not take it in front of the sun, or you would not use earth, or you would not use the other methodologies, right? You would probably use water to purify it, right? So understanding different kinds of water, how to make najis thing pak is really, really important. Please try to understand. I cannot focus on this more. It's really, really important, right? Firstly, what are the different kinds of water we have, right? Unfortunately, I don't think so. We have a lot of time left, so I'm going to do it really quickly now. The two main kinds of water that you should be concerned. So we have rainwater, we have the water of well, we have running water, we call it Jarry water, right? And the two kinds of water that are really relevant to us are core water and the Khalil water. The core water means the water which is in such a huge quantity that is over 384 liters, right? 384 liters. Remember this number. You don't have to go and try to do it and try to quantify yourself, but just on general knowledge, a core water is any water which is 384 or more is called what? Core water. Any water which is not which is not over 384 is qalil water, right? So what is the difference between qur and qalil? So the difference between the qur and qalil is that the qur water doesn't get najis if it comes into a contact with a najis thing, generally. Unlike the qalil water, mostly the waters that we are using in our container are like when you go to a washroom, right? And you use the water container to purify yourself, that's qalil water, right? Or let's suppose you're using one of the utensils within the house and you want to use that utensil to clean it. That's qalil too, right? So the utensils that you use, the lota or the water container that you use in the washrooms, right? All of it is qalil. Qalil means that, the quantity, lesser quantity water, right? Core water is higher quantity water. So qalil water, the problem with qalil water is as soon as it gets in contact with the nijasa, it gets najis. Even the slightest, something really minutest, even the minutest nijasa or the mutanajjis thing gets in contact with the qalil water, it gets najis. While with the pure water, while with the qur water, even the nijasa, if it gets in contact, even if it's a little bit bigger in the quantity, unless one of the three things doesn't change, it is still pure. If the smell of the water changes, right? If the taste of the water changes, or if the color of the water changes, one of the three things change, then only the qur water would get najis. Please try to focus on this point. Really important. With the qalil water, even if none of the three things changes, as soon as it gets in contact with the nijasa, it will be najis. But with the qur water, it doesn't matter, right? If it gets into a contact with the nijasa, it will not get najis unless or until one of the three things get changed. Now, what is the practical ruling for us? Really important, right? Imagine you are in a swimming pool. A swimming pool definitely contains more than 384 liters, right? It has a lot of water, and you use that swimming pool and you're swimming in that water. And someone, we shouldn't do it, but let's suppose someone urinated in that water. They peed in the water. Now, if they peed in the water, right? So the nijasa has got into the contact with the qur water, with the swimming pool, whatever the water is in the swimming pool. But even then, the water would not get najis. Why? Because the color, three things. The color hasn't changed. The water is still colorless, right? The taste of the water has not changed. Usually you would have chlorine water, right? So the chlorine water, the chlorine, you can still, if the water goes into your mouth, you can still feel chlorine within it. And the smell of it hasn't changed either. If none of the three things has changed, you would still consider the qur water as pak, as tahir. So even though someone has peed in that water, but that water would still be considered as pak, as tahir. So imagine if one of your friends told, okay, when I was in the water, I did this, you would still think it was pak, it was tahir, it's not najis. Why? Because of the ruling of the qur water. Now, one of the very important things, and here you understand the importance of the shower that we use in our homes. So one of the shower you use sometimes to take a bath. So since, at least I can say for Canada, right? Even in Pakistan, if you have the containers, the huge containers, we call that tanki, right? So if the huge containers that you have within your homes, right? If the capacity of the water is 1,000 liters, if it's 2,000 liters, 3,000 liters of the water that it can store within it, the huge containers, then the water that's connected to it would be considered as qur water too. The tap water that you have in your houses would be considered as qur water. This is a really important masla, my friends. Please try to focus on this because that can help you in solving so many of the things. The qur water, the tap water that we're using in Canada at least, it's connected to a water agent, right? A source of the water, which is qur. So the tap water that's coming in our homes, right? That water would be considered as qur. Now, what does that mean? It means that the Muslim shower that you're using some of the houses, we have those Muslim showers. Some people would use a container. Some people would always also have a Muslim shower with it too. So Muslim shower that you're using, or the shower that you're using to take a bath, that would be considered as cold water too. Now there are difference of ruling, and it is so easy if you're using a cold water as a purifying agent versus if you're using Khalil water as a purifying agent, right? Because if you're using Khalil water as a purifying agent, it becomes a little bit difficult. I think the time is 11:39. I would ask if the information that I have conveyed is a lot. We can continue with the Khalil and cold water a little bit more in the next class if you want, or if you want, I can finish the topic today completely, and whatever the suggestion is. Whatever the suggestion, I don't want to overload the people with a lot of information. So the students, they can speak up, like, how do you want to continue? Do you want me to continue with the lecture, or you want to question first and then you want to continue with the lecture in the next class too, and we go easy then?
Yes, please ask if you want to ask any questions, or if you want.
Because this topic, sister, it has a lot of questions in our minds too, and
Yeah.
it doesn't matter the big one or the small ones. I just don't want to give a lot of information and take the question time out. I want to give maximum time to the questions, inshallah, and we can go through the topic, a little bit of it again in the next class. So the Quran and the Khalil water, a part of it we'll go through in the next class, and we will also discuss about some of the rulings that you need to have in your mind when you go and use the washroom too, right? So let me know, like, if you have questions, we can go forward. If you don't have questions, I can go a little bit with the class too. And don't be afraid and don't be ashamed, like, don't feel ashamed if you're asking any question, right? Because it's really, really relevant to all of us.
I think we should better stop here and let them ask questions.
Okay, inshallah. So let's just continue with the questions now. And please ask as many questions as you have, because I cannot imagine people not having any question. And if they're doing the things 10 times a day, like if I would be a student, I would have 15 questions in my mind because I'm doing it every day, right? So please don't be ashamed if you have any question in your mind regarding anything, right? Go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Yeah, so I had this question that I thought of this question multiple times because I thought this question was like dumb or something. But what if, like, no billah, if like Quran comes in contact with a najis thing, would the Quran be like pak, or would you have to like use mutahirat or something?
Excellent question, my brother Muhammad. Allah bless you so much. And I'm really, really glad that some of my students, they're always here in the class, and I would appreciate them live, because obviously it's an honor for me to teach them. And it's a blessing that we are together and learning together. We have Brother Sajjad and some of the other students too. I might not name all of them, but I'm really, really glad when I see you, all of you in the class. See, the thing is, Quran is one of the most respected and venerated thing in Islam, right? It's within the sha'air of Allah, it's within the signs of Allah, right? So with Quran, if it gets into a contact with the najasa, it gets impure, of course, right? Why? We're talking about the body of the Quran. We're talking about the book, or the place where you're writing the Quran, right? We're not talking about the original Quran, which is in Lawh al-Mahfuz, right? So that Quran, obviously, there is not even a question of the najasa and taharat there. What we're talking about are the normal copies of Quran that we have in our homes, right? If it gets into a contact with najasa, let's suppose you're reading Quran, and let's suppose your finger starts bleeding, and part of it goes onto the Quran. You're reading the verses, and part of it goes onto the verse. The immediate duty that you have to do is to purify it. Inshallah, I'm going to go through the more details about how to purify a najas thing. But let's suppose, just for the sake of the question, I'm going to explain you a little bit quickly, right? The best way that you can do to purify anything that gets najas is to take the ayn of najasa out completely, right? So let's not take the example of Quran, let's take the example of my hand, right? My hand, let's suppose it gets najis, right? So first thing, I will not bring it directly to the tap water. I'll just take a tissue, right? And I'll take the ainun najasa out completely. So there's not even a single trace of najasa left on my body. Once the ainun najasa is completely out of my body, I would bring it under the tap water and I would wash it one time, right? That's only, again, more discussions would be followed in the following classes. This is when it has been, it got najis because of blood, not because of urine. Because of urine, there's separate rulings. Inshallah, we're going to discuss it in the next class. So with the Quran too, take the ainun najasa out, take the blood out completely with the tissue paper, with anything, with the Kleenex. And once the body of the Quran, there is no traces of it is left, you take it a little bit, not completely open the tap water with full strength, open the tap water a little bit, right? And bring that body of the Quran that got najis under it and purify it immediately. There are some things that you cannot wait. Imagine if a masjid gets najis and if you're praying, and if you know you cannot purify the masjid while you're praying, and you have enough time for yourself to pray later, you have to cut your prayers there and then, and you have to purify the masjid, the part of the masjid. I'm not talking about the normal Husseini Imam, but I'm talking the masjid area, right? The thing that are, let's suppose if you go to Jafi Islamic Center, and if you go to the main hall of Masjid al-Ghadir, if, God forbid, part of it gets najis, right? The duty of every believer that's standing there is to purify it ASAP, right? So likewise, these things, these rulings are very important. If a Quran gets najis, it has to be purified immediately. If khak shifa, na'udhu billah, the khak of the Karbala, not the Karbala, of the blessed grave of Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wassalam, if it gets impurified, we have to purify it immediately. Likewise, Quran, and likewise, not masajid, and likewise the haram of Imam alayhi salam too. Let's suppose you are towards the zari of Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wassalam, and unfortunately, your part of your feet, it starts bleeding, right? And if the najasa would go onto the floor of that haram, it is important for us to purify it immediately, right? If you could purify, you have to do it. If you cannot, you have to tell a khadim that, see, there's a blood there, can you purify it immediately? And he would do the rest of it. You don't have to worry about it. But you not telling them and just keeping in najis would be a grave sin, right? So these are the things that are called sha'airullah, the signs of Allah, right? These signs of Allah, be it the masjid, be it the Quran, be it the khaki shifa, be it the urtabat, the haram of Imam alayhi salam, they have to be respected and they have to be taken care extra, in an extra way, right? Not the normal way that we do. I hope it, inshallah, it answers your question. Any other question from anyone?
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead. Go, Sajjad.
So if you're outside in public and sometimes you don't have water and you have to go to the washroom, can you still go to the washroom if you don't have water available?
Very, very nice question. I think it's really relevant, and it's really, really relevant here in West, at least, right? So you go to the washrooms, you don't have water there, what you do there, right? Inshallah, we will be going to discuss the rules of using washrooms a little bit more in the next class, and we can discuss that a little bit in detail. But what I would do is that I would use, I would use a tissue for them, and I would at least try to take the ainun najasa off. Let's suppose if I'm peeing, so I'll make sure that, my private part, I would at least use the tissue paper, right? Or something I would use so that there is no urine left on my body. That's the first thing that I will do, right? If you are not peeing, if you're pooing too, then there's some other rulings, inshallah, I'm going to discuss in the next class. And while you have pooed, right? So for that thing, you can even use tissue paper, and even if you don't use water, ritualistically, or it can still get pak. It still can get tahir, even if you don't use water. But that's something that I'll be explaining a little bit more in the next class. And see, sometimes when we're discussing that, when we started, look, I personally started attending the lectures when I was your age. I would laugh a lot. And that's completely fine if you're doing too, because these things, when we're discussing it, sometimes we are ashamed, we're laughing. It's completely fine. It's natural to do this, right? But again, don't be ashamed if you are asking the questions, because your question is not only for yourself, but also for the others too, right? So you're giving double, triple, so much benefit to everyone. So what I would do personally would to at least make sure that there is no najasa left on my body, on my private body or any part of my body. And I completely dry it out with some agent, be it the Kleenex, be it a tissue paper, but whatever thing I would use to completely dry it out. And then while the thing has not gone pak yet, it's still najas. But that najas doesn't mean that the undergarments that I'm wearing, or the pant that I'm wearing, or the shirt that I have tucked in, that will become najas too. Why? Because we have already discussed the najasa can only go from one part of the body, one part of the thing to another, if it's in liquid form. If it's dry, then the najasa would not transfer from one body to another. This is a really important ruling you have to keep in your mind, right? So let's suppose your private body part is still najas. You haven't cleaned it completely, but there is no ainun najasa left. So when you put on your undergarments, or when you put on your pants, or when you tuck in your shirt, right? All your shirts, all your pants, and all your undergarments are still tahir and pak. There's no problem in. So you come back to home, and then you use the washroom again, and then you purify it with the water. And once you have purified it with the water, you can just have the same undergarment, you can have same pant and t-shirt or shirt, and then you can pray in it too. But at least make sure that there is no najasa left. There is no najasa, please. When you are in like public washrooms, or when you are, let's suppose, in a shopping mall, when you are in a restaurant, and there you have to use the washroom, make sure you take the ayn najasa out completely and dry yourself completely, and then put on your undergarments or put on your pant or shoes, right? This is important. But while you are in the state of the najasa there, you cannot pray in that state. You still have to clean yourself. While sorry, you have to clean yourself before you pray. Sorry. One way you can do, and some of my elders, they have told this to a lot of other people too. You can take a Kleenex. You can take 5 or 6 Kleenex. You then make it completely wet, soaking wet, that the water is dripping out of it. So you take the Kleenex, or you can use a bottle, right, and clean yourself. But let's suppose you don't have the bottle, but you have the tissue papers with you, right? So you take 6 or 7 tissue papers, depending, and you have with you, and you bring in the tap water, and you completely make it soaking wet. Then you just hold it as soon as you're done with peeing, right? So you squash that the tissue paper, and the water will fall from it. When the water will fall from it, and when you would try to clean your private part from it, your private part would get ritualistically pure from it too. You don't need a lot of water to clean yourself. Please, my brothers and sisters, you don't need a full container of lota to clean yourself. You can even do it with the smallest of water that you have. How can you do it? As soon as you're done with the najasa, right? Try to dry it up completely. And once you have dried up, just try to pour maybe 10 drops of water, 15 drops of water, 2 times or 3 times, and that's it. So you can sometimes barely do your purification with the smallest amount of water too. Really, really small amount of water too. That would be good enough for you to clean yourself too. Inshallah, I'm going to discuss more of it when we go through the rulings of the washroom in the next class, inshallah. Are there any other questions? Please don't, we can go over time too, that's not a problem, but I want everyone to understand the topic that we have discussed today completely. Even if my elders, they would have any question, they can ask any question too, no problem.
Hello, I have another question.
Yeah, go
So
brother.
if you're not sure if the resource is kasir, like more than 384 liters should be considered kasir?
Excellent thing. I think some of the questions that you're asking, we'll discuss a little bit of it in more details. But just to give you a really short answer, if you're unsure it's qalil or kathir, you would consider it as qalil. You would consider as less water, right? But again, there are some more rulings towards it, right? Generally, the tap water, I'm talking in terms of Canada. I'm not talking in terms of Pakistan, India, or other countries, right? I'm talking in terms of Canada. Tap water here, generally, I'm saying, not always. Generally, all of it is kathir, is skur water. It's not qalil. So if you're using the tap water, rest assured it is kathir water, right? But let's suppose you were in Pakistan or India, you're one of the most remote areas in Canada where they're using a water container on the top and the water is coming out of it. And you're unsure if it's Khalil or Kathir, right? If it's Kur water, if it's Khalil water, then you would consider as Khalil, inshallah. I hope it answers your question. Any other question? And anyone has any other question? Please don't be ashamed of asking any questions. Completely fine. Please.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah, my brother. Go ahead.
So I was a little late to the class, so I didn't hear like everything you said, but I still have a question.
Go ahead, my brother.
So like you said, if something comes in contact, like if something with like a big quantity of water comes in contact with something najis, it's gonna be fine, right? As long as its smell doesn't change. But I heard somewhere that the smell we have at like pools and stuff is because of like the mix of chlorine and like pee. So is there like anything we should we avoid pools, or should we just keep on?
No, don't worry about it. So having some chlorine smell within it doesn't make it impure, doesn't change the form of the water, right? So you might have a little smell coming. Even the best of water you would use on the earth, sometimes you would have other smell coming in from too. If you use the river water, you can smell a little bit of sand in it too, right? If you just go on a river and you take the water randomly, if you go on Lake Ontario and if you take the water there, you can have a little bit of smell of the green thing that's inside too, you know? So just having a little bit of smell, which is not the water smell, of course, right? Is not a problem. It's completely fine. It will still keep it cold water. It will still keep it the clean water, right? So unless or until that smell hasn't changed. So you can completely understand. Let's suppose it also depends on the vicinity that you have. Let's suppose you are really close to a person that peed in the pool, right? And only that portion of the water where you're standing, you can just completely smell it something different. You know, you don't feel it like the normal clean water. You can just smell a little bit of pee in it, right? Then that water, only that portion of the water would get najis. The rest of the pool is still pak and still tahir. So if you change your position, if you go towards the other side of the pool, you would still be considered as pak too. Does that answer the question a little bit, brother?
Yeah, sort of. Thank you.
Yeah, inshallah. Inshallah. Any other question? Anyone has it? Or if you guys, I understand, if it's a little bit difficult for you to ask, please message. Because this topic, the Nijasa and Tahara topic, I want all of you to understand and to have a good grasp of it completely, please. Because this topic is really important for all of us. Any other question anyone has? If not, then we can, inshallah, end this lecture with Dua Imam Zamana.
Yeah, I think I can send you the question. Maybe I understand that this topic is a bit sensitive, and maybe they must be having questions, and they can send me or either you directly.
Please, please.
So let's recite Dua Imam Zamana.
Inshallah.
Turn on your mics and start Dua Imam Zamana.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكن